Democratic presidential hopeful Kamala Harris talked up her plan to promote an opportunity economy and defended her past policy shifts and track record as vice president during her first high-profile news interview since moving to the top of the ticket earlier this month. Vice President Harris sat with her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, for a lengthy sit-down with CNN veteran Dana Bash, who moved through a number of issues during the closely watched interview, which the network stretched into an hour-long special. The first interview, Harris-Walz. The interview was pre-recorded earlier in the day while Harris and Walz campaigned in Savannah, got pressed about what she would do on day one if elected. Harris replied, "Going to be about implementing my plan for what I call an opportunity economy," she said. "I've already laid out a number of proposals that include what we're going to do to bring down the cost of everyday goods. What we're going to do too is invest in America's small businesses, as well as families," with her proposal for a permanent $6,000 child tax credit for low- and middle-income families. The highly promoted sit-down follows the Harris-Walz campaign's successful Democratic National Convention in Chicago, which rallied the party faithful and gave the Dems a typical post-convention bounce in the polls. But Harris has faced criticism and doubts about her capability because she has done few interviews with journalists since she became vice president in January 2021. In late July, Harris was thrust into her history-making campaign when the 81-year-old Biden acquiesced to the widespread calls for him to withdraw from the race given his advancing years. Harris defended her 180-degree shift on energy policy, involving taking steps back from promising a fracking ban. During her first presidential run in 2019, she vowed to ban the natural gas extraction process that has deep environmental consequences. Harris told Bash her position on fracking changed in 2020 and noted that she has taken no steps to enact such a ban during her time as VP. "I kept my word and I will keep my word," she said. Harris kept the shots at former President Donald Trump, her GOP opponent, to a minimum. But she didn't shy away from criticizing him as representing a dangerous force in America. "First and foremost, one of my highest priorities is to do what we can to support and strengthen the middle class. When I look at the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people, I think that people are ready for a new way forward, in a way that generations of Americans have been fueled by hope and by optimism," Harris told CNN. "Sadly, in the last decade, we have had in the former president someone who has really been pushing an agenda and an environment that is about diminishing the character of who we are as Americans, really dividing our nation." Later in the interview, Harris was more pointed about her stylistic differences with Trump. She blamed the billionaire real estate developer turned politician for reflecting a different period for America's body politic. "I'm talking about an era that started about a decade ago where there is some suggestion that the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down instead of where I believe most Americans are, which is to believe that the true measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you lift up," she said. Bash held Walz to account on a number of questions that have arisen about his past statements and actions. Walz proved an effective campaigner by turning his answer into a policy point that is also a big differentiator between Harris and Trump. Walz has faced criticism for repeatedly asserting that he and his wife experienced IVF treatments while trying to start a family when they used a different fertility procedure known as IUI, or intrauterine insemination. Walz called that a distraction around the real issue of each candidate's position on abortion and reproductive rights. "Most Americans get it. If you've been through that, I don't think they're cutting hairs on IVF or IUI," Walz said. "I think what they're cutting hairs on is an abortion ban and the ability to be able to deny families the chance to have a beautiful child." Walz was also pressed on what critics have said were past exaggerations about his military service with weapons of war in the National Guard. Walz sidestepped the answer and again suggested that outrage of this was a tempest in a teapot overshadowing the more important issues around gun safety and gun control policy. "I think people know me. They know who I am. They know where my heart is," Walz said. Other issues highlighted by Harris as priorities for her administration should she win in November included climate change, inflation, affordable housing programs and the opioid and fentanyl epidemic across the country. She also reinforced her backing of U.S. support for Israel, the nation's attacks on Gaza. She reiterated recent statements that the Biden administration is focused on negotiating a ceasefire. She vowed to pursue what we must do to ensure Israel is secure and in equal measure, the Palestinians have security and self-determination and dignity. Harris and Walz avoided any major gaffes during the pre-taped interview. Harris sounded like a former prosecutor in delivering her closing statement to bash with confidence. "I am running because I believe that I am the best person to do this job at this moment for all Americans, regardless of race and gender," she said.